I thought I could trust the woman I loved, until I walked into my own home and discovered she'd been hiding her ex behind the word friend. I told myself I wouldn't make a scene. I'd rehearsed polite phrases in my head on the drive home. Hey, nice to meet you. I'll leave you to catch up, and imagine nodding like a man who trusts his partner without reservation. That's how I wanted to be, calm, reasonable, immune to petty jealousies. I pictured the apartment as neutral territory, a place where grown-up friendships could happen politely on a couch with 2 cups of tea. Then I opened my front door and saw the Timberland boots. Big, masculine, planted in my entryway like a statement. That was the first little lightning bolt. Lena, my girlfriend, looked up like she'd been caught in the middle of a joke she hadn't told me the punchline to. A guy I didn't know sat on my couch, the way someone sits in a place they plan to stay a while. He smiled like he belonged. Hey, I said, when I should have said nothing. He stood up, hand extended. I'm Kyle. He added, with a little too much ease, I'm Lily's ex. The name landed in my ears wrong, like a chord someone had played out of tune. I'd been calling her Lena for 2 years. Lily sounded intimate in a way that mall romance monologues understand, but men who live with reality do not. What friend? I should have asked. What old friend? Would have been the exact phrase. But the silence in the room grew fat with explanation she hadn't given me. She said, quietly, I told you an old friend was coming by. Not once did she say the word ex. Not once did she pause and add, by the way, he's the one I dated before. Not once did the two of them do the awkward pivot every couple does when an ex and a current partner are introduced and everyone makes the script work. He was cocky in a way that made my mouth dry, like a man who knows the rules bend in his favor when he wants them to. He talked like they'd been laughing about the past for hours. I tasted the bile of being an interruption. I asked him to leave, because my apartment was my line and I was refusing to be pushed past it. He asked Lena if she wanted him to go. She didn't answer me. She looked away, at the coffee table, at anything but me. And in the way she averted her eyes, I realized whose side she'd already chosen. I didn't scream. I didn't break things. I told him, cleanly, this is my place. I'm telling you to leave. He stood, grabbed his jacket, and moved toward the door like a man who knew how to take his time exiting a room he'd already stolen. Later, when the evening unspooled into apologies and small talk and the echo of something fragile between us, she tried to make it smaller. He's going through a rough time, she said. He needed someone to talk to. The words smoothed over my anger as if it were a wrinkle she could iron out while we both held cups of tea. I didn't want to make a big deal of it. It's the little omissions that bruise. Inviting a stranger, an ex, into my apartment for a private catch-up is not neutral. It's a decision that puts a new history into an old space. You don't inform me by labeling him a friend when the truth will read as secrecy if anyone reads between the lines. That night I sat on my couch and watched her cry apologies, and I felt nothing but the tight, indifferent sort of exhaustion that follows being surprised by betrayal. I had loved her. I thought I still did. But watching her sob and beg for forgiveness felt like watching a play I knew the script to and had no role in anymore. I told her it was over. I packed her bag when she moved slowly through the apartment, helping because I didn't want to be the kind of man who leaves someone on the floor of their shame. She left. She left the keys. She left me with the echo of her words and a dozen questions that never merited answers. Why didn't she tell me X? Why sit across from him for hours in my living room when she knew I'd come home at 9? Why choose to be invisible to the person she cohabitated with 80% of the time? In the morning the messages poured in, I'm sorry. I love you. He reached out of nowhere and there was a pattern in the grammar of her apologies, soft, paper-thin, designed to be folded up and put away. The thing that made me angrier than the infidelity was the deception. Infidelity is a hit, deception is a pattern. I spent the day thinking. The instinct to call, to follow, to yell, to make my point across and reclaim my dignity, rose like heat in my throat. But my father's voice came back to me, steady, slow, teachings about not being a man who loses himself in an immediate reaction. His advice that night had been practical and oddly funny. You're 6 feet. You could drop a man. But a man who drops another with fists loses everything else. Keep your head. So I kept mine. But I also kept evidence. I sat by the small light of my kitchen, and I read the parts of the story she never planned to speak aloud. She'd said she was a friend, which means there were messages that could have offered clarity, proof of context, or scattershot confessions. Screenshots give you context carved in pixels. For the rest of the week I moved like someone reclaiming their life quietly. Screenshots, saved voicemails, a copy of the message she'd said she hadn't meant to hide. I didn't post them. I didn't gloat. I saved them like someone stores winter wood for a season you'd rather not face unprepared. She called me from the gym parking lot, voice brimming again with shaky remorse, and I felt the old tenderness flare, foolish and fast. I let her in once, in my head, and then I closed the door with more care than iron. We met to talk. She cried, full and messy, and said all the things about how it was a moment and not a pattern, how he reached out, how she hadn't known it would feel like betrayal. If you've ever watched someone beg to be absolved, you know the thing people call repentance can be rehearsed. That's when I went strange. I didn't cut ties at once. I let her say the words because I wanted to hear how she built a narrative where her choices were accidents. I decided, privately, to require time as currency. Trust does not return on request. Trust is paid in slow installments. So I let her ask for another chance. I let her say, we'll go to therapy. We'll do everything. I let the therapist's office sit on the calendar like an appointment with truth. But I also watched. I am not proud of that. I stood in doorways and listened to the soft hum of her phone, the weight of it in her hand, and I wrote down both what she said and what she didn't. Her explanations were painted in soft colors, her actions in harsh ink. When she kept hugging her phone in the car as though it contained a life preserver, I felt the panic of someone who sees cracks in the foundation and is asked to pretend the floor is whole. Slowly, deliberately, I let reality do the rest. The world cares about stories. So I reduced hers into facts. Dates. Times. The night he came over, what she told me, the way she didn't tell me. I told myself I wasn't punishing her, I was choosing a life I could live in without doubt. I moved my things out of the shared closet and into my apartment's spare room. I set boundaries with the finality of a man who'd learned the price of soft borders. She accused me of being cruel for not offering an immediate reunion, of being dramatic for refusing to fold myself back into the same shape she had bent into her secret. Maybe I was cruel. Maybe the man who is betrayed and publicly polite is indistinguishable from the man who is cold. But after a while, you discover there's honor in not pretending your life is a stage prop for someone else's drama. A week later I put the proof into a folder and sealed it with a little ritual, screenshots, messages, a list of times she had been evasive. I didn't want to humiliate her. I wanted a record. People say you should forgive, and maybe, one day, I will consider it. But right now, I wanted clarity and something more practical, a reset. What happened next was small and ordinary and brutal. She texted her friends. She told one version of the story, he showed up, we talked, it was nothing, and another to her sister, that I overreacted. People pick the version that makes them comfortable. You learn which friends will say what a shame and which will say about time. The ones who say about time are the ones you keep. The ones who say what a shame are the ones who prefer the drama to the truth. I watched her try to stitch herself back in public like a seamstress trying to hide a tear. She posted a photo with a caption about vulnerability. She wrote things about forgiveness that read like wishful thinking. I read the comments, sympathy, advice, the soft bullets that pretend to be helpful. People will stand on the sidelines of someone else's collapse and offer prayers the way they offer umbrellas in a photograph. The hardest part was the indifference I felt when she tried to return to the rhythms we'd once had, the shared laundry, the lazy Sundays. That absence of feeling surprised even me. You imagine that anger and grief will go in waves, that sorrow will be romantic like a movie. Instead, the balloon deflates and you find the room emptier. You can still open the door and see the same couch, the same coffee table. You can still make pancakes and package the leftovers for work lunches. But the scripts you shared are gone. Eventually, she left for good. She took the bag she packed the first night I told her it was over and the key she'd left on the table. She walked out like someone who had practiced stepping out of the frame. I closed the door and sat on the floor for a long time. Not in drama, not in sobs, just sitting and listening to the apartment decide what it would be without her. People ask, later, what I want from a man. I want quiet. I want the knowledge that choices are spoken honestly. I want the ease of walking into a space that both of us consider ours, not translations of private histories. I want someone who sees me and chooses me in ways that are measurable. I dated, eventually, because the body is a ridiculous thing and you can't let it go cold forever. I learned the litany of warning signs like a new language, guarded phone, late nights with a plausible excuse, laughter that doesn't include you. I learned to ask the blunt question earlier instead of pretending my curiosity is an accusation. Sometimes, on a quiet night, I still see a pair of boots in the entryway and I feel the old spike of something. A memory will make me sit up and check the locks, and the house will answer back with the sound of air through vents, just the mundane mechanical life continuing. I remind myself that the best revenge was not to humiliate her, not to make her pay, but to refuse to spend my life reliving that moment on repeat. To have moved my things, put my files in a drawer, and allowed myself the luxury of no longer being surprised by someone I trusted. If you're the person who reads this and thinks, I would never, ask yourself how you'd announce the presence of your past in the present. Names mean something. Words like ex and friend are not exchangeable. If you're ever the one invited over to someone else's house where they live, have the decency to introduce yourself honestly. If you're the one whose partner trusted you with a key, think how that trust feels when the door is used as a set piece for familiarity. In the end, Lena's friend text is a small thing that did a big job. It proved how little we sometimes tell the people closest to us, and how big the cost of that small omission can be. I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to live in that sentence forever. But I also won't pretend the truth is lighter than it weighed the night I walked through my door and saw boots parked in my hallway. The apartment kept its shape. I kept mine. That, stubbornly, is enough for now.